Hello and welcome to our Hillfields live project presentation. Thank you for coming. We're just going to introduce the team. I'm Kai.
Hi, I'm Georgia.
Hi, I'm Holly.
And hi, I'm Ariane. We are the UWE Architectural Masters teams for Hillfield. Our brief for this project was to create an event or outcome involving local residents to celebrate Hillfield's 100th anniversary. We'll be presenting our experience thus far and our ideas for the future, followed by a Q&A. Hillfields was the first council-built housing estates in Bristol. The estate was built during the Homes for Heroes drive for improved accommodation following World War I. The Hillfields estate included over 40 houses types. These house types were winning designs in architectural design competition run by Bristol Council. The experimentation in the homes designed at Hillfields meant that several house types would be successful, being reused in other Bristol housing estates, whilst others remain unique to Hillfields. The first part of the Hillfields to be constructed was used as an exhibition zone. Planners and architects from across the country would visit Hillfields to see these initial experiments in council housing, so Hillfields housing estate is of architectural interest. It also highlights an often overlooked part of the UK's history, the history of social housing. Local Learning, Myers Insull Local Learning Community Interest Company, has been collecting a history of the Hillfields housing estate. Alongside Bristol Festival of Ideas, they are organising events to commemorate Hillfields' centenary. These include tours of Hillfields and memory sharing events, scheduled to take place in the summer of 2021. We have continued to develop this tradition of events, working alongside Ruth Myers from Local Learning to create a winter trail in Hillfields for December 2020.
We wanted to have an organic timeline to allow the flow of the project to be led by our community conversations. So by maintaining these community conversations, as you can see by the orange boxes, we were able to follow the project. So we even communicated with the community after the trail. So we had a site visit earlier on, which was our first time meeting each other. So we got a feel of the area. The media interaction started halfway through the project, with the trail happening on the 18th of December. We want to take a similar approach to the proposals for the summer trail, but have a longer time frame for each. We again wanted to try to keep our Zoom and our phone calls organic to allow people to speak freely and openly. Each of their stories often sparked new stories. We did steer some of the conversations around certain topics, for example, food and the board game. So we have phone calls for those who were not online and they were contacted separately, but they were asked similar questions to those that were arising in the Zoom calls. These audios were recorded and used for key quotes in the videos. Building relationships with the community was at the heart of the project, allowing them to keep their enthusiasm for further projects, as well as building friendships with one another, connecting the community and keeping conversations going.
We talked to local residents about their childhood in Hillfields and how the community has changed over the years. For the interest of the winter trail, we focused on questions to do with their early memories of Hillfields during the wintertime, which opened up stories of Christmas pasts from the 1930s through to 50s. They also kindly provided us with photographs from this time. We originally focused on questions about winter, but the conversations also naturally led into making comparisons and differences between Hillfields past and present. We covered a vast array of topics from memories of wartime, food, recipes, council rules on housekeeping, and many more. The open conversations we had over Zooms made quick connections between others, while the one-on-one phone calls allowed space for more in-depth storytelling. These conversations helped us to identify the community spirit of Hillfields and how the residents feel about the area.
Our discussions with residents informed activities we designed for pupils attending Hillfields Primary School. We designed 6 number activities tailored to the different age groups attending that school. To comply with coronavirus regulations, we did not enter the school. Instead, we created videos which explained the activities and incorporated audio clips from our conversations with the residents.
For the project, we wanted to create a past, present, and future theme. We wanted the children to reflect on the past while understanding the present and to look towards the future. We wanted to take this idea into our future proposals. The first video was the paper chain. This was targeted at reception, year 1 and nursery. The video was kept basic but also included audio from local resident Dorothy, who told us about how she used to make decorations with her sisters as a child. The children were then tasked with making one of two types of paper chains, either a cut paper chain, which was either formed in the shape of a Hillfield house or Christmas shapes, or they could make a looped interlocking paper chain. The intention was to use these decorations to decorate the library on the winter trail.
Having spoken to Hillfield's resident Carol, she introduced us to a poem written by her mother, Mrs. Brown. The poem, named Rake the Embers, is about watching a fire and seeing the things in the flames. We wanted to recreate this idea when making our activity. We asked the students to write poems on flame-shaped templates we provided, and the individual flames were assembled into a fireplace poster.
And the next video was for the Year 3 classes. So we introduced the history of the Hillfields, construction, some of the house types, the architects, and we connected this story to Rita, who's a Hillfields resident, that told us about some of the cardboard houses she received for Christmas with cotton wool for snow on their roofs, and they opened up for sweets inside. So we made an activity and produced templates of the 3 house types for the children to decorate.
We spoke to long-time Hillfield resident Ken, who remembered growing up in Hillfields, seeing the old lamplighter going around igniting the gas street lamps. Inspired by this memory, we created an activity for the Year 5 pupils. We created a lantern net shaped like the old Hillfield gas lamps for the children to assemble.
The next video was inspired by the continuing theme of food. A lot of the residents spoke about their time at Christmas around the war when rationing was implemented, so we tasked the children with making their own menus from ration allowances. They would decorate their own plate to make a main course and a dessert.
And the last video was inspired by conversations of the Great Winter of 1947 and the residents' memory of this time. And this led us to connect the story of a child from Hillfields Primary School who sent a letter to Hanover, which was Bristol's sister city, during the harsh winter, along with shoes and other gifts. And we asked the children to write a letter of what their winter looks like today and their ideas of the future.
So when we were making the videos, they were structured to have the first half as information and the second half as a Blue Peter style run through of the task.
When creating the videos, we edited together archival videos and images of Hillfields to create visuals which would run alongside the residents' audio clips.
We produced templates for the students to work with and sent links to the videos we made and posted on our YouTube account. We were pleased to see the amount of engagement the student had with the activities.
With the pandemic, it was important to have an online presence to get the word out about the event. Our first was on BBC Radio Bristol, which was an early morning slot. We were then featured in 2 newspapers. The first was Fishpond's Voice, which is a small newspaper that's handed to local residents, and the second was the Bristol Post, in which the Bristol Times mentioned our project. For those not with an online presence or would not otherwise see it, posters were put around Hillfields and in local shops. We made sure to be across all social medias. The Twitter, Instagram and Facebook all had interactions. Facebook was then linked to local Facebook group pages. The website served as a central hub in which we could display the videos and the trail map. All of the social medias linked to the website, as well as the posters having a QR code to the website. There was also templates for residents to watch the videos and make their own decorations.
So our community engagement activities inform the design of the Hillfields Heritage Winter Trail, and these included activities and displays that related to Hillfields during the winter time, and the aim was to engage Hillfield residents through the shared experience and storytelling. So a COVID-safe way of completing the trail was established, and we used QR codes and audio boxes. So we created these posters that would represent each of the videos using an illustrated symbol, and that would form a QR code hunt across Hillfields. And we produced an interactive way of reaching the wider community of residents to get involved by engaging with this online map, that highlighted where the posters were across the estate. And the audio boxes would also reach those that didn't necessarily have access to the QR code reader. And we shared this printable map on our website, and it would also advertise some of the events of the day, some fun facts and clues to look out for.
We also created a central hub at the Hillfields Library. The library's windows and railings were decorated with the output from the school children's activities. A memory tree was installed, which attendees were encouraged to decorate with labels detailing their memories of Hillfields. Despite the gloomy weather, we managed to engage with a couple of residents, and we've seen quite a bit of engagement with the online component of the winter trail, such as views on the YouTube videos and downloads of the activity packs from our website.
So participating in these community engagement activities gave us a much better understanding of what to include in the Hillfield centenary celebrations. As we found that the winter trail was a good method for engaging with residents, we thought that the centenary celebrations could take the form of the summer trail too. The ideal time for the centenary celebrations would be about June 2021. The event would then coincide with other Homes for Heroes celebrations organised by the Festival of Ideas. A couple of options have been prepared for each of these components to suit whatever level of funding is available. We carried forward a past, present and future theme which was successful in the children's activity, which we came up with 3 different topics to cover. Some of the quotes we have taken from local residents are, for example, for the past in the fireplace is, the fire was nice, bright and cheerful, which was Dorothy. For the present in the table, it was, I was always excited about Christmas dinner because we always felt it was something special. But it was always just homemade food. And for the future and the allotment and the skill sharing, it's I'm a model maker for planes and boats. I haven't coached a youngster in 10 years. They're not interested. Children are bored by it. They're not taught woodwork at school. They now have headphones in or phones, and you can't get them interested. I wouldn't know how to get the old spirit back. Covering this, we identified 4 areas to develop in the proposals. The first was the board game, which we discussed from the start with residents. This was about continuing the conversations and unearthing more stories, as well as allowing residents to interact with one another in the future. The second was the fireplace. The children's display we felt was very effective on the trail, and residents often spoke about the fireplace being a central hub and source of entertainment. The long table idea was from the key theme of food bringing people together, again prominent this year, and a theme we are seeing brought back up as a time to spend with family and friends. The last was the allotments. These were made through the identification of old allotments being lost and then now being a demand for them. We also want to bring in here the idea of sharing food and skills, which the residents often spoke about.
And we felt that these 3 themes covered, continued to carry forward our past, present and future theme for Hillfields. So the fireplace element would reflect Hillfields' past, and it should be an activity or product that would encourage storytelling of those memories of early Hillfields, but would also encapsulate them into a visual celebration that would spark conversations about its roots. The dining table would be an adaptable outdoor space for what the community needs it to be for the everyday. It can naturally bring people together through a sharing of food and conversation, food being something that we identified as a great unifier, memory sharer and bonding experience. And the gardening or skill sharing element would offer something for Hillfield's future growth. It would be a tool to bring people together to share amongst the community its different members' personal expertise and skills, and working together on a project that could expand into the future. And the board game, through the development of the board game with the residents, we found it to be a great storytelling tool, and the residents proposed many different iterations of what the game could be, its goal and purpose. And we helped to draft a map design that would reflect the Hillfields distinctive plan from above, highlighting key communal buildings in the area. And the aim would be to unearth memories or facts about Hillfields. And we use the arrows to express the chance to explore nearby outer areas of Hillfields, which was something that residents mentioned was key when growing up. And the public transport connections help you move quickly around the board. We found a way that it was a way of collecting memories and moments of history that otherwise wouldn't have been captured. And you can see an example card. And this would be educational as well as to spark conversations. And we really want this to be something that would be continued and taken forward with the community, and perhaps bring the children from the Nerva School in to help with its creation, or maybe illustrating some of the buildings on the board.
We looked at successful projects from the past, which we were keen on bringing forward and implementing the ideas. The Southgate monument in Bath we liked as it contained reflections which represented local place and local people. We wanted to use the element of bringing in the community into our designs. The shelter was inspired by a project in 2013, which was made to host workshops and which brought the community together. We want to provide an area to gather and share. The allotments we wanted to be a community project, so we took precedent from the Paris Community Garden, which saw green spaces on abandoned areas revitalised. We also believe that there's an opportunity to involve local and regional businesses. So the ULK are based in Knoll West, and they are the University of Local Knowledge, which they have an aim to share skills. So we believe this would be a good space to share skills from the residents, and filming and activities could take place through our proposals. Travelling Kitchen is Bristol based and could host workshops around the long table using grown food. This company would also provide the skill sharing opportunity of involving children and creating some fun foods. The Hillfields Community Centre is a key part of the community, working with all age ranges to promote, enable and facilitate activities. We believe this is how we could also bring in teenagers who we have not previously been contacted through this project. By involving all areas of the community, more people can get involved and spark a sense of pride in the project, keeping it going for the longer term.
And we wanted to introduce a matrix for the designs that laid out from a zero to a high budget option to be introduced for the summer trail, and it would suit a level of whatever the funding would be available, or to be able to test the ideas before moving into high budget options. So going through them, the Fireplace example would move from free silhouette puppet workshopping to a temporary exhibition, moving to a higher budget, more permanent structure to commemorate Hillfield's past. The food sharing element could be something as small as a picnic, to share meals and gather food memories, to a temporary table, and to a higher budget option of a more permanent sheltered space. And finally, the growing element could start off as something as small as a seed exchange to connect those with an interest or skills, moving to workshopping events, and finally a more permanent allotment option.
So the idea of the Fireplace came about from a poem written by a former Hillfields resident, Frida Brown. We hope that through this installation it will spark conversation and storytelling among attendees of the centenary celebration. So our zero budget option is Shadow Puppets, which would be event centred and would involve the community bringing their own torches and props. The idea behind this is to bring about conversation starters, either mimicking their own stories or creating new ones. The low budget option is a prop style fireplace, which is constructed of mainly wood, and the idea is to keep construction costs down. The middle would have a wire meshing, which the community would be able to stick their memories to, eventually building up enough to look like a fireplace. This would be a portable item which could then be brought inside after the event and made displayed. Our high budget option is a large lantern style light. This will have stained glass panels attached to it, which residents will have the opportunity to decorate themselves using glass paint before being assembled on site. Around the bottom, the poem will be shown. This will be solar powered and will act as a centerpiece in which people can gather around.
The gathering space was inspired by the memories of Hillfield's residents about mealtime and communal eating. This gathering space could be as simple as a long table or as complex as a bespoke shelter, decorated and engraved with images of Hillfield's past. The high-end budget option, The high-end budget option for the workshop would be a small covered timber structure to be used as a craft space, providing a tall level work table for adults and a low level for younger children and wheelchair users. Two of the sides of the workshop would be outfitted with sliding doors to act as a windbreaker and be engraved with symbology relating to Hillfield's past. These sliding doors will also provide an opportunity for local school children to design interchangeable panels that can act as a temporary gallery.
The new allotments would be a communal project focused on skill sharing. Hillfield's original allotments were lost over the years, so this proposal would resurrect a missing part of the community. For the zero budget option, we could compile a seed share advertised by local people using transferable skills. For the low budget option, we would run a workshop at which residents would build their own allotment planter. At this workshop, Residents would be taught to assemble the planter from an old timber pallet and a timber A-frame either side. After construction, the residents could take the planters home. This planter's design was conceived for ease of use. It would be accessible whilst standing or in a wheelchair to avoid having to bend down. A small water butt could be installed to the top of the planter device. A perforated pipe from this would provide passive irrigation to the seed beds. The high budget option would be to create a place for these planters, a new community allotment at a centenary celebration park.
Although each of these design elements could act as an individual standalone project located at different points around Hillfields, we also considered the potential to have them as a combined proposal, providing a park-like environment during the day and a more intimate venue for night events.
There were several green spaces in and around Hillfields we considered for the centenary park celebrations. We would suggest not using the Hillfields Park for this, as it is already a well-used public asset. There are also several greens in Hillfields, which we would also suggest not using because the clearness and openness of these green spaces is an important feature of the Ebenezer Howard style garden suburb, and we wouldn't want to obstruct it. In this presentation, we are going to suggest locating the Centenary Celebration Park at a location behind the nursery and community hub, although we would want to consult and engage with the community on this issue. The benefits of this site would be people are already associated with the area with community facilities as it's next to the community hub. It's out of the way so it would not attract unwanted attention, and it's easy to make secure as there are already existing boundaries on several other sites.
Here is our interpretation of what that could look like. However, this project were to go ahead, it would be ultimately up to the community to decide how it would be implemented.
And through further community engagement, we would identify attitudes to security issues, and depending on the final location of the site, it would affect the security aspects. So the site we've located and developed in those visuals, as it's more sheltered, we would need a fence, and locking would maybe need to be applied, leaving it unlocked during the day, but locked at night unless events were on. And it would also look to be absorbed into the community hub. We would introduce planting options that would help to define the boundary, and the fence would protect children playing, keeping the boundary well defined and separate from the car park. And tools would also be on a tool sharing basis, where the residents would bring their own, lend them and take them back home, or they would be locked within the community hub.
We have identified two potential funding bodies for this project. Power to Change, which supports local businesses across the UK to create better places, and the Heritage Fund from the National Lottery, which provides funding on projects considered to be of heritage significance. The high budget overall build for this project would be under £21,000. This cost can be reduced, however, depending on the level of community engagement.
Our main scheduling plan works around the main event. So, assuming the trail was set in the last part of June 2021, the preparation can span over 22 weeks. The community meetings would start and continue throughout, and it would consist of fortnightly or monthly meetings to maintain contact. The community can be directly involved in the design work and ideas for the trail. Social media advertising would also start early on. This would be important to reach out to new people. This is also why in-person advertising should be at the start too. Advertising for the event in person or on other forms of media can take place near the event to build momentum. Preparation work for the final design should start in April to allow for ample time for sourcing materials and construction of any larger elements. This does not include the high budget. The school task should be made early on and allow for a wider time frame for the school to complete the activity. If the high budget option were to occur, the design should be finalised by week 10 to allow for plentiful time for construction.
We enjoyed engaging with the community, undertaking the winter trail, and coming up with the centenary celebration design. Our community engagement activities will be documented in a legacy booklet and remain online for posterity. If we are able to obtain funding, we believe the proposed outcomes would provide concrete benefits to the community, and it would also be an appropriate way to celebrate the centenary of this estate and form a legacy of community engagement for the next 100 years. Thank you for attending this presentation. We are now open to questions.
Thank you. I thought that was really interesting. I've got lots of questions, but wonder is there anybody else that wants to respond?
And thank you, Ruth, for connecting us with everybody. Really.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've really enjoyed the project as well.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
The sheer level of community engagement has just been like a resource that's been invaluable throughout the entire project. I think I can't think of a single idea that we have had that hasn't had its origin stemming from our interactions with the community on our group calls.